Guns are one of mankind's most ingenious and deadly inventions. From standard-issue handguns to fearsome beasts like the ones we're about to see, guns have been a wartime staple since their inception in the 13th century. While most firearms follow a practical design scheme, over the course of the last several hundred years there have been some eccentric outliers. In this video, we're going to look at some of the largest, most ridiculously oversized guns in history. Let's start with the oldest weapon on our list, the Dardanelles gun. While there were a handful of cannons technically larger than this one, unlike the Dardanelles gun, very few of them were ever fired in anger. The massive cannon was cast out of bronze way back in 1464 in modern-day Turkey. It weighed a staggering 16.8 tons and was over 5 meters long. The projectiles for this beast were large stone balls up to 63 centimeters in diameter. The Dardanelles gun looks impressive enough on paper, but what really makes it exceptional is that in 1807, 340 years after it was built, it was dusted off and pressed back into service to fend off the British Royal Navy in what became known as the Dardanelles operation. The British suffered 28 dead from the old cannon's bombardment. 60 years later, it was gifted to Queen Victoria, and it now resides at Fort Nelson in Hampshire. For those of you who want the absolute biggest medieval artillery piece and aren't concerned with its military usage, up for your consideration is the Tsar cannon. Like the Dardanelles gun, this behemoth was cast in bronze. It was 5.3 meters long and weighed more than twice the Dardanelles gun, a whopping 39.3 tons. As you might have guessed from its name, the Tsar cannon hails from Russia. Specifically, it was crafted in Moscow in 1586 by Andrei Chokhov. Officially, this imposing piece was never meant to see combat, but was instead designed as a symbol of Russian power and industry. However, at least one study of the Tsar cannon has revealed gunpowder residue, which would seem to indicate that it was fired at least once. Perhaps simply a ceremonial puff of smoke. Contrary to what its current display would have you believe, the Tsar cannon was only meant to fire 800 kilograms of stone grape shot rather than solid cannonballs. This earned it the nickname the Russian shotgun. To this day, the Tsar cannon holds the record for the largest muzzle-loading cannon ever built. Moving forward to World War I, we get a taste of truly ridiculous scale. Between March and August of 1918, the German Empire fielded what became known as the Paris gun. This unprecedented siege weapon had a barrel length of 34 meters and holds the prestigious honor of launching the projectile that became the first man-made object to enter the stratosphere, a height not exceeded until the Germans developed their V-2 rockets during World War II. You heard that right. The Paris gun was capable of firing 106 kilogram shells 40 kilometers into the air. That's almost 4 times the maximum altitude of today's commercial airliners. This massive power allowed the Paris gun to bombard targets over 130 kilometers away. The altitude also had another complicating effect. The flight time per shell was about 3 minutes, so long that the Germans had to factor in the rotation of the Earth to even hit the city. When the Germans began their barrage of Paris, the citizens initially thought they were under attack from a high-flying Zeppelin because they could neither hear an airplane nor a cannon. Of course, there was a cannon, it was just too far away to hear. By the end of its service, the Paris gun had fired between 320 and 367 shells and killed 250 people and wounded an additional 620, with a significant portion of the death toll coming from a single lucky shot on a crowded church. The gun was rushed back to Germany as the Allies advanced, where it was dismantled and all schematics presumably destroyed. Jumping forward again to World War II, we find the Germans back at it again with a new monster weapon. Germany thought they would need a way to break through the French Maginot Line, so they commissioned an unprecedented weapon with a shell that could punch through 7 meters of concrete or 1 meter of steel armor plating, from beyond the range of the French artillery. An engineer working on the project calculated that such a feat would require a weapon with a caliber of 80 centimeters that would weigh over 1,000 tons, supported by not 1, but 2 railway tracks, with a projectile weighing 7 tons, as much as a bus. So, naturally, Hitler ordered 2 of them. The design and construction work got underway, but it soon became apparent that the guns would not be ready in time. However, the German army quickly flanked the static Maginot Line through Belgium, and its destruction became unnecessary. The first completed gun, nicknamed Gustav, was eventually deployed at the siege of Sevastopol in the Soviet Union, where it caused considerable damage with its massive bus-weight shells. The finished gun had a barrel over 30 meters long, weighed 1,350 tons, and could lob shells nearly 40 kilometers. The massive artillery piece required an equally massive crew, needing 250 men just to remain in operation and continue its rate of fire of 1 to 2 shots per hour. Besides the men required to operate the behemoth, the Gustav gun also called for 1,250 engineers, scientists, and guards to assemble it over the course of the 4 weeks following its arrival at the front, aboard 25 separate trains. It may have been a marvel of engineering, but it was a logistical nightmare. Gustav and its sister gun Dora were both dismantled by the Germans near the end of the war. To this day, the Gustav railway gun remains the largest caliber rifled weapon ever used in combat, the heaviest mobile artillery piece ever built, and fired the heaviest shells of any artillery piece ever made. And finally, the last gun on our list was never actually finished. But if it had been, it would have been the largest gun ever made. It was called Big Babylon, and was part of an overarching plan by Iraqi President Saddam Hussein to create several super guns. The project was headed by Canadian artillery expert Gerald Bull. Bull had a tumultuous history with many world powers, spearheading the development of advanced artillery capable of launching satellites into space, but also dabbling in illegal arms dealing. After a short stint in prison, he built a personal rapport with Hussein, and convinced him that Iraq needed such advanced capabilities if it were ever to become a regional power. Construction began on what was called Baby Babylon, a smaller-scale prototype of the planned supergun. Despite its reduced capabilities, Baby Babylon would have had a range of almost 650 kilometers. The real goal, Big Babylon, was planned to be over 156 meters long, weigh 2,100 tons, and have a bore of 1 meter. This absurdly huge artillery piece would have had the capability to fire 2-ton projectiles into orbit, where they could be guided to strike anywhere on the planet. When Iraq invaded Kuwait in 1990, Bull suddenly found himself working for a man considered the enemy of almost every nation on Earth. In March of the same year, Bull was assassinated with 5 shots to the back of the neck as he entered his apartment in Brussels. There's much speculation regarding who had Bull assassinated, but the mystery has never been solved. Regardless of the culprit, Project Babylon died with Bull. Had it been completed, Big Babylon would have been the most ridiculously huge weapon ever devised, and it's doubtful if any such project will ever be attempted again. If you'd like to learn more about the history of superguns and other artillery, check out the links in the description. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to keep up to date with the latest content. You can watch my previous video by clicking here, or watch my other videos about weapons by clicking here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.